Welcome back to the Mind Matter Lifestyle. I'm Mikey Weiss, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing, wait a minute, something's missing. That's better. Caffeine, one of my favorite subjects. So today should be a fun video. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, energy drink, pre-workout, because we're gonna discuss all things caffeine. So when I approach caffeine, I like to approach this in two categories. One is for training performance and the other is just for recreation. So just feeling good throughout the day and, regular caffeine consumption. And before going into this video, I am not a doctor, I don't have a PhD. All this advice or education that I'm going to give you guys today is based around myself as a caffeine user, and also I coach people, so caffeine is what I consider to be a very beneficial and safe supplement. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about how to use caffeine for your training. So there has been some research done on this topic, and there was a study monitoring cyclists, and each cyclist was given a different dosage of caffeine. They range from lower to higher consumption levels of caffeine. And across the spectrum, they all noticed similar improvements in their training performance. And any weightlifters, any CrossFit athletes, any cyclists, you all know that caffeine increases your heart rate and gives you more energy, and based on the dosage can increase things like strength and focus. So obviously this is of huge benefit for training. Now, as far as recommendations go, how much caffeine is good or beneficial for your training session? Well, most pre-workouts are dosed about right. Anywhere from 175 on the low end to say 400 on the high end. And the majority are gonna land somewhere in between. Now, when it comes to caffeine, everyone's going to respond very, very differently to it. So it's always good to start on the lower end and then assess your tolerance from there. And one thing that I've noticed with caffeine, both with my coaching clients and with myself, is that there are some people that just are hyper responders. They respond to a nearly microdose of caffeine. Some people can feel the effects at not even a pre-workout, at a tea. I mean, I know people that have 75 to 80 milligrams of caffeine, which is, that's lower than a cup of coffee, and their heart rate is going, they have the shakes. Some people even report getting things like anxiety. Well, if someone who was that sensitive to caffeine took a scoop of, say, a higher dose pre-workout, they would need to go to the emergency room because they'd be having a panic attack. And then you have some people like myself where I can take 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine and honestly I could probably go to sleep. And one thing I've noticed about caffeine, and really just a pattern I've noticed about people in general, is that some people just respond to stimulus very easily. And what I mean by that is usually the people who are very sensitive to caffeine, they don't require a whole lot of most things to get the desired effect. For example, they don't require a whole lot of sleep to feel rested. They don't require a whole lot of training volume to grow muscle, and they don't require a lot of caffeine to feel the stimulant effects. Where on the other side of the spectrum, there are people like myself where they need large dosages of things to get the desired effects. I need 8 to 10 hours of sleep to feel rested. If I get any less than 8, I do not feel well. I require a lot of training volume to grow. And naturally, I require a lot of caffeine to feel the stimulant effects. And so this plays a role in how you should dose your caffeine, because if you don't need a whole lot of it, it doesn't make sense for you to use a lot of it, because you can develop a tolerance to caffeine and the more frequently you use it and the larger the dose, the more you're going to require. So like most things, you should start small, see where your tolerance is, and begin there, and you can assess to see if you would in fact need more, because you might very well be able to get away with small doses of caffeine. And the best time to do that is right before you go into the gym, when you want your energy to be at its highest. So this is when I recommend, if having one dose of caffeine per day, this is the time to do it. Or if you are having several doses of caffeine, this is the time to have your highest dose of caffeine. And anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, just depends on the person. I mean, that is a great window of time to have your caffeine. Some people like pre-workouts, some people like coffee. For me personally, I'm a pre-workout guy. I love pre-workouts. I've been using pre-workouts pretty much my entire adult life, ever since I started training. And for me, there's just nothing better than sitting in my car, thinking about the day, thinking about the workout that I'm gonna have, maybe typing up a social media post, typing up emails to clients. I don't take pre-workout like a normal person. I don't just slam it down. I know that you're supposed to, but some point down the line, I got into this ritual of just kind of sipping on my pre-workout in the car, and it's always just been a very peaceful time of the day for me, and that's just my routine. So every training day, I do have pre-workout, and I sit in my car, and I just get myself ready for that training session. So how much caffeine should a person have per day? If you go to the Mayo Clinic website, their recommendation is 400 milligrams is a safe amount to take per day. Now, for some people, that might be a lot. For some people, that might be that sweet spot. For other people, that might be a low amount. It just depends on the person. But their recommendation is 400, and I'd have to agree with that. I mean, that's a pretty safe amount. Do I do that? No, I don't do. I have more than 400 milligrams per day, even when I'm not in prep. So when I'm prepping for a show and I'm doing something where my energy is just low, naturally, you start with the caffeine at a low amount, and over the months, that caffeine comes up to the point where, yeah, I was taking in about 800 milligrams per day, and I know people are gonna be like, oh my God, but for me, honestly, that's me holding back. I could easily take in a gram per day if I wasn't watching it and being very careful. The funny thing about that is, because I'm a non-responder, that amount which would cause a hyper responder to feel panic, to not be able to sleep, it didn't affect me at all. My nervous system felt fine, my adrenal glands felt fine, and my sleep was quality. I sleep soundly throughout the night. So again, this is just one of those things where, yes, some people can handle a lot of caffeine, other people can't. I just happen to fall in that category of people who can handle a lot of caffeine. Do I recommend that? Of course not. I don't think anyone should be taking in 800 milligrams of caffeine per day. When I'm not in prep, obviously, I'm a little more mindful of my caffeine. I don't rely on it so much. So yeah, a pre-workout and a second source, maybe a cup of coffee or an energy drink, that is really where I find that I personally feel my best, and most people will really do well. So I would say on average, 400 to 500 milligrams, something like that, is pretty responsible amount, as long as you feel okay doing it. If your sleep starts to get affected, if you feel agitated, if you feel anxious, you're taking in too much caffeine, so you should definitely be mindful of what your body is telling you. Outside of training, another great reason to have caffeine and to use caffeine as a supplement is because caffeine is an appetite suppressant. So if you have a small bit of caffeine, like say a cup of coffee, well, that's going to temporarily raise your metabolism, it's going to increase your heart rate, and you're not going to be as hungry. So if you're working on something like fat loss, you're going to be hungry on a pretty regular basis. And obviously you're not going to want to eat food every time you're hungry, because that's going to take you out of your calorie deficit. So if you add in a small cup of coffee, say 100 milligrams to 115 milligrams of caffeine, well, that's going to suppress your appetite, and that's a great tool for fat loss. It also makes you more productive. So you might be more active, you might be more fidgety. So this is going to keep yourself burning more calories as well. So for fat loss, it is a wonderful tool to add in, once you get into those later weeks of your diet. And you could replace coffee with an energy drink. Obviously, sugar-free is going to be the way to go, because if we're talking about calories here and we're talking about fat loss, then yeah, you're not going to want to add in a sugar drink. Another thing to keep in mind with caffeine is, like any good thing, if you overdo it, then yeah, you might have some adverse effects. Adrenal fatigue, that's really common if someone's just abusing caffeine. So a good way to tell if you're abusing caffeine is if you're not getting the effects of it because you can build a tolerance to it, and of course as you build a tolerance, that becomes your new normal, and then you need more and more and more to get the same desired effect. So taking time off caffeine can be beneficial to reset your tolerance. So if you find yourself not getting the effects that you want from caffeine, try taking a week off, and then after that, you'll be able to feel the effects again. So just to recap, for training performance, it's best to prioritize your caffeine intake around your workout. If fat loss is a priority, saving some caffeine for either earlier on in the day or later on in the day can help to suppress your appetite and keep you in your calorie deficit. And moderation is important. Don't abuse caffeine on a regular basis, and make sure you're being safe and responsible with it. So what's your favorite source of caffeine? I gotta go with pre-workout for me. Nothing gets me hyped for the gym, nothing gets me more excited, has me training harder than good old-fashioned pre-workout. And make sure to leave a comment, because I see you guys liking, and I appreciate the likes, but the comments do a lot to help get this channel off the ground. And I want to hear from you guys. So let's get a discussion going in the comment section. Let me know what your favorite caffeine is. Please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to get my help personally and you'd like me to coach you, you can do so by visiting my website, themindmatterlifestyle.com. Don't forget to follow me on my other social media platforms where I do post daily, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.